Sweet. Sorry, I'm trying to share right quick. Doesn't seem to be wanting to do it, so we'll see. Hopefully everybody's sweet. Awesome. Welcome everybody to March 12th, AWX Community Meeting 2024. First couple talks, it looks like we actually got an update on one here. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Alan. First on the agenda is myself. I am standing in for Christian. AWX recently upgraded to Postgres 15. So there is a forum post there. Please test it, break it, tell us how it breaks, tell us why it broke, tell you how you did it, the whole 9 yards. And readiness checks are available as well. Yeah, those can be found in the forum post there. Since I didn't write it, I'm not going to elaborate much because I can't really talk to it. But it's there and available for folks if they want to do that. Well, at some point you will have to as well. Next up, Alan, talking about progress and update on the RBAC changes.
Hi. Yeah, the core structure actually hasn't changed too much of it, but we have like a little bit more that we can update on like the plan going forward. There's been plenty happening with it. But
Alan, want to share Alan, or you want me to?
Well, I can share my screen in 1 second. I left a comment where I was trying to link to the docs. I'm not. Oh, you can just click on it. Why don't you just do that? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and click on the RBAC.md, the README file.
Alan, would you mind giving a short introduction for people who didn't watch the last community meeting?
Right. The short introduction is that this is both like a feature and like a bigger thing about where we're maintaining code and keeping things like that. So we've had roles in our system, and the way that roles haven't changed in AWX for since they were introduced, in terms of structurally, you create an object and then it automatically creates object roles associated with that object. So if you make an organization, it makes like 12 different roles because those are different gradients of permissions that we want to offer to people. And this is a system that would allow custom roles, and that's what we're working towards. And there's quite a few notable architectural differences and stuff, so I definitely like go into all of that here. But these are instructions firstly for using the library, and then what we're going to do and what we already have up in the AWX PR is that we kneecap the existing role system. We're gutting that. We're going to remove that system and we're going to replace it with this. And then this role system is in fact going to be shared with other apps as well. So the repos are public, so I can go ahead and say I'm doing this in EDA server too, as Ansible has event-driven automation. EDA server is a repo. It's a public repo where its server is there. So we're trying. We're making this pretty big development sprint right now to integrate a singular role-based access control system into AWX and EDA server. So that's moving along. It's shaping up to the point that this week we might be looking at merging this library into Django Ansible base, and there's still going to be some weeks and months ahead for the rest of the integration with it. And again, so a key feature here is the custom roles. And because of that, that means that you're going to you can define what roles can be assigned to users. That's the kind of language that I'm using, and I can take you through the particular things. I kind of have to be particular about the language. So it's like you give user permission to something, and you do that via a role, and then that something has to be an object. So then there'll be like 3 different things. So you give user a role to an organization, and then that can allow the user to have permission to various things in that organization. And those permissions in the new system are specifically enumerated. So we'll have permissions listed. So it's like if you look at like these examples, it'll have like view inventory is like a permission. We append like a prefix onto that in the API, but it's no big deal. It's obvious like by the name. It's like these tend to track like CRUD, create, read, delete permissions. as well as like special action permissions. So it would be easier to give somebody like permission to run all job templates in an organization. Well, you can already kind of do that now, but this gives more granularity to that. And I think that the big feature for AWX in particular that we didn't get before, I really like to promote is the add permission, where before we never had a separated add permission. And if you look at like what you can and can't do with the current library, that's huge, huge in my mind. And that requires that as like a nuance of the implementation, you give somebody the permission to add a job template or to add a credential or to add a project. That means that after they create the object, then they have to be explicitly assigned permission to that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have permission to the thing that they created. So that's a part of what this does. And again, that didn't exist before because our organization roles, as many as they were, like 12 or some, typically just tracked the different resources within the app, like workflows or job templates, but that wouldn't separate out the particular actions. So separating out the add action is the one major new thing that we're offering here. So I think that up till now, that's been mostly the same update as last time, but we're closing in on it. There's like a lot of like testing and stuff that's happening in order to wrap it up. Starting from the library and then moving out to rolling out into AWX and other things. So as we get this to the merge point in AWX, we really have a plan. The current AWX implementation offers backward API compatibility. So we do believe we're going to merge this and ship this with the existing UI. And that means that in the UI, you won't be able to do that new feature I'm referencing, which is that you can give people add permissions, specifically in isolation of other permissions. So yeah, and again, add permission lets users like create their own stuff, but then not be able to muck with other people's stuff. And then sometime after that, we have a new UI and like it's a really ground up UI rewrite. So that's, I think that's in the Ansible UI repo, and that's going to be the implementation details of that is still not completely laid out, but that's the process, I think, here in some like weeks to months. Like we will get this new system in and have it released. I don't know exactly when, whenever we can, right? And then that will offer this new API functionality according to the new endpoints documented in the upstream library. But then you would be able to use it, but then it would kind of like not work entirely for the presentation layer and the UI, because like the old UI is not going to support new functionality that the new UI will. So then sometime after that, before long, we'll ship the new UI. So if you're getting it from like the standard sources, that'll just like appear at some point, I imagine. But that will be like a 2-stage rollout to get it into everyone's hands. And that's the end of my update.
Oh, fantastic, Alan. So key takeaway, right? The first phase of rollout, we are aiming for full backward compatibility to our current RBAC system. So for users of AWX, we shouldn't observe any noticeable differences, right?
That's right. And, you know, we'll be accepting bug reports and we'll be fixing what we can. We have what I call like a whole translation layer of going from like the new models to the old models. So then there's definitely like, there's already been a lot of like bug discovery that happens for that. And to answer a question in chat here that came up, talking about who can create custom roles. And yeah, right now it's limited to super user. But it doesn't really make sense that the roles are org scoped. It's you have a role and then you give somebody that role to an organization. So that's why you don't put the roles like under an organization. It just doesn't really like the scoping doesn't really happen at that point. But at some point we might have like a global role to create a new roles, but roles couldn't make sense. Like the role definitions themselves couldn't make sense under org scoped, I would say.
And is this any different from the current system?
The current system, you can't create custom roles.
Well,
that's
okay.
yeah, but once custom roles will be pretty globally available. Because the roles are like a custom role is just a list of permissions. So hopefully that shouldn't be containing any sensitive information unless you put something sensitive in the description or something, which like, why would you? So then, and you creating custom roles, and those are available for to any user for any object that they can give somebody else permission to. So like you go into the menu to give permission to an object, and then you see the built-in roles and the custom roles.
All right. Any other questions for Alan?
Yeah, and feel free to tell me to take this offline, but right now I'm using the AWX Ansible collection to manage roles and teams and all that fun stuff. And I was just curious if the behavior would be somewhat similar, or if that collection would be updated with this new method, or just kind of how that would look like, if you guys have an idea.
Yeah, we haven't updated the collection yet. That's still like in this to-do items, which may or may not slip like past the initial merge. But we definitely need to do that, because what's not supported in the collection, what's not going to be supported natively by the backward compatibility in the translation layer, would be the act of creating custom roles. So it's expected kind of logically that you would use the collection, I think, to create custom roles in particular. That makes a lot of sense to me. And then, yeah, the kind of language for assigning roles might be a little bit different. Like if you want to assign role by a role ID versus something else.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
So just to be clear, first phase is backward compatibility. And Alan, before we move on to the next topic, how can people get involved?
Just know that it's coming, I think.
Can they try out the feature branch? And
You could try it out with Docker Compose. We have the AWX devel image for the feature branch, and that's what you would have. That's what you would realistically use for it, because otherwise dependency management is quite difficult, because this is the core logic is put inside of the Django Ansible based library.
Currently in the feature branch, we lock it to your fork of Django Ansible based on the right branch, correct?
Yes, but I can't tell you quite how often that's rebuilt.
Gotcha. So, but like, if anyone who want to try this out on their own system, I guess I will encourage you to build a custom AWX image, make AWX cool build, I think, or something like that. It's in the documentation somewhere, and just replace the image, try it out, and see if it's compatible, and see if you discover any bugs. We need all the help we can. This is a huge change. This is a huge change. Yep. All right. Thank you very much, Alan.
We have Seth up next.
Yeah.
Talking about readiness checks and I guess migration changes.
Yeah, so let me share my screen real quick. I just wanted to quickly kind of show people what the next release for AWX will look like whenever you do a migration. And some of the readiness checks that we now have in place. So let me share. Should say proceed. There we go. Does it look good?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's showing up.
Okay. Does everybody see my terminal?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a, let me unpause my cluster here. So if I show what pods are running right now, this is kind of a brand new cluster that I spun up. And you can see one difference that you're probably not used to is that the task container, here's the task container that I'm highlighting right now. You can see that it hasn't actually started. The status is in sort of an init phase. And that's because as part of our bootstrapping scripts, we do a readiness check, and it's going to be waiting on the migrations to complete. Before we had like a script that kind of pulled the migration to C, But now what we do is the migrations are now running in a separate Kubernetes job. And that's why you'll see an extra pod that's running whenever migrations are running. So you can see that there's a pod that's created called AWX-migration, and we can, do a logs on that pod to see what the status of the migrations are. So you should be able to see all the migrations applying in real time. I think maybe these are already finished. Let me see. If I do a stern on that. Well, yeah, so it says completed, and I think that what happens after the reconciliation, eventually these task containers should go into the running state. So one thing to look out for is that with future migrations, all the migrations will happen in a separate Kubernetes job, and that this pod will sort of just stay around. It'll be in a completed state, so you can always pull the logs and that sort of thing. So that's the main change I want to just demonstrate, so that in the next AWX release, you should be able to look out for that. And that's it. Any questions around this?
So previously, right, we used to exec into the task container and then run the AWX migrate command. One downside of this, I think we all probably know at this, is like you don't get live logs when you run stuff in Ansible, right? Like this is a bash command, and you don't get the scrolling, and you can't really, and that log is really hard to parse for whenever stuff goes wrong with migration. Now the full output of the migration command is here in the pod log, easier for debugging, and also it records like the previous failure. Right, just in case there's anything wrong with migration. Make it debugging easier too. So cheers. Shout out to David Hengelman for doing all of these fantastic work.
Sure. Oh, sure.
Hageman, sorry, Hageman, David Hageman. All right. Any questions? Oh, looks like I'm up next. So
Yeah, it is UHAL, yeah, with binding EE image versions with default AWX version.
all right. Recently we had some problem within the community where people keep running into just this like JSON parsing, nondescript JSON parsing error. I think it's somewhere linked to this. I mentioned this, and there was a mention here somewhere down there. Scroll up. It's pretty early on, right there. Can you click into that?
This one right here.
No, it's in the related. Go down right there. Fail to JSON parse a line from worker string.
What the green button is.
Oh, right. Oh, see it. I was looking at the comments, not the errors, not the link issues.
And the community have came out and helped me, providing us with like all the different failure cases. So we squashed like 4 or 5 different bugs that could have caused this. Thank you very much, everyone in the community. But one of the persistent problem, right, like that people keep asking on the forum and keep asking in this issue is, how do I the change is in AWX EE, it's in the receptor itself. People are struggling with like getting the actual latest image with the fix. And shout out to our community member Kirkobo for helping everyone out with that part. But I don't want to have to answer that question again. So the best, Kirkobo and I talked a little bit on the forum, and essentially we decided to version the AWX, pin the AWX EE image, like at release time to a specific version, and by default using that image with the deployment of AWX. Notably, the control plane EE where the receptor runs. And if you can pop back to that PR, I can talk through that right quick. And thank you. This is a community contribution. Yep. So let's talk through this PR. What does it mean for the next release, which is coming today, by the way? Click the file change right quick. So in the next release, you will see additional execution environment showing up in the AWX execution environment UI that have specific version tied to it. And moving down. And also, the control plane EE image will by default be bound to the same version as the AWX images, so that this mismatch doesn't happen anymore. Now, you can still override anything you want, but this is a change to the default behavior, and hopefully this will help our community to actually pick up the later EE images and doesn't end up in a mismatching scenario. All right, any questions? All right, perfect. I'm gonna, Jake, I'm gonna take over screen share for the next one.
Yeah, sounds good. I see.
All right, awesome. So the next part I want to demo some of the developer productivity changes that we made to the AWX Docker Compose development environment, hopefully helping everyone who's contributing to AWX itself. All right, so let's see. I have my VS Code open here. Let me close this and let me start from the beginning. So here's my VS Code. This is opened on my laptop. You know what? Let me start from the beginning and just make sure that I show everything. All right. So here's my Docker Compose development environment running. Here's my checkout of AWX. And here is a VS Code open on my laptop. So I have the Docker plugin here. I'm gonna attach the VS Code to that Docker container. Now this is within the Docker container. So the first thing that we fix is our inability to run unit tests within VS Code. 1 second. There we go. So now all the tests should discover correctly, and you should be able to launch any test you want directly from the testing panel within VS Code. Thank you very much, Chris Myers, for working on this with me. I no longer have to go hunt down the syntax for that for running specific tests. It's a huge developer productivity boost, at least for me. Hopefully, anyone else, hopefully other people enjoys it too. Yep, functional tests, Swagger generation, all that jazz. Everything works. All right, moving on to the next thing. So sometimes it's hard to debug AWX. Like there's people in our team have various methods with like SDB, PDB, or whatever other methods. I couldn't get any of that to work. I don't know if it's just because of me or anything else, but we got Python debugging working in VSCode. So again, this is me attaching my VSCode to the Docker Compose container, to the AWX tool one. And I'm going to show the launch.json. In the launch.json, we define every single component in AWX and how to launch it. We do have to do a little bit different things for USG, since USG is not Python. So we end up using run server and run server plus to replace USG if you're trying to debug. And then we define a bunch of tasks here for shutting down the corresponding components that's managed by supervisor. So let me bring up my terminal right quick. So here is everything that's managed by a supervisor right now. And I'm gonna go and launch run server plus. It's gonna stop USG because we're using run server plus to replace USG here. And then it's going to start run server plus with debug pi. And now I can set breakpoints. I'm just picking a random spot to set a breakpoint. All right, let me go to my screen. Well, I already had the breakpoint, but I have full debugger integration into my VS Code. Yay. Any questions? Anyway, this is currently at a works on my laptop, works on Chris's laptop, and maybe Seth's laptop. If this looks beneficial to you, please try it out. All right. And then I want to show off one more thing that's not on the agenda. Kind of last minute. We just got it working. All right. Let me stop this. And when you stop the debugging process, the one that's managed, the corresponding process that's managed by supervisor will launch. Again, we define all of the processes already in the launch, so you can debug any process you want. All right. So the new thing that I'm working on right now is kind of stem out of Django Ansible base. Because we have external dependency that we are developing, right? We need to be able to mount in the dependency in editable mode, and be able to like make change, see the change take effect, all within without like rebuilding the environment or anything, right? So let's see, do I have any editable dependency mounted right now? All right, let me remove that. Well, let's not remove it right quick. So in my newest PR, let me see. Editable dependencies in Docker Compose development environment. There's a README for how to use it. It's not very well written right now, but try it out. So let me go ahead and link in the Django Ansible base. there's a new directory underneath Docker Compose tools Docker Compose called Editable Dependencies. And if you link in the source that you want to be live editable, so I have Ansible runner and Django Ansible base. And let me start this up without editable dependency right quick. Execting into the grep Django Ansible base. All right, here's the version of Django Ansible base and Ansible runner. Let me pause. Let me stop this, and then start with editable dependency. While this is starting up, I can talk through what is happening here. So I add an init container that runs as root that go installs these dependency. It's happening right now in editable mode. There we go. Now that's finished. So Django Ansible base, voila, and Ansible runner. All right. Let's go back to our VSCode inside of the tools tools AWX container. Indicator right here. I can see in the file system. 1 second. AWX devel and all the editable dependencies, and I can set breakpoints anywhere I want within these code and run the main process in debug mode, like the one like how I demonstrated earlier, and you can trigger the breakpoints. I don't have any good breakpoint in mind right now. Does anyone have one? Seth?
You do the middleware.
Well, I want to set a breakpoint inside of editable dependency, and it's showing that the triggers.
You can just for Ansible runner, maybe one of the unstream utils unstream or something, and then just run a job. Like it'll hit. I don't know. There might be an easier one. Let's do it. Fine.
Yeah, search for like the callback thing in there.
Well, note to self: next time, prepare a better demo example. But anyway, you all get the point, right? Any dependency that you want to, any dependency that you have to touch, that you're developing alongside AWX, you can have a easy-ish interface to link them into AWX now in editable mode. For those people who use Emac, I can't help you. All right, that's my thing. What's next?
I think that's it.
Awesome. All right, we have 20 minutes left. I think we're gonna open the floor.
That's everything. Do we want to stop the recording now?
Sure.
Yeah, so if anyone else chimes in, I'd be happy to kind of talk about how we're currently using AWX. I come from a shop that was very, manual Ansible focused. So as you can probably guess, thus the RBAC questions. We use the RBAC bit of it very heavily. We have like the team and org mappings to AD groups. We have perhaps too many organizations to do stuff. So maybe just maybe more of an open-ended question, or hey, Will, you're doing it wrong type thing. But one thing we found kind of almost necessary is in regards to callbacks. We have a separate organization where we just give them auditor, so that they can view the token, view the URL, but they can't accidentally launch a job and hit everything in the inventory. And I'm just kind of curious how other people deal with that, or like I said, if it's just a situation if you're doing it wrong.
To be clear, you're talking about callbacks after triggering a job with an API?
Yeah, specifically using like having a job template that uses the provisioning callbacks and just preventing people from the UI itself from hitting the launch icon and just launching it on everything in the inventory. So our kind of workaround
That's
is
the way
just to
callback works. Callback, when callback, and one of the devs can tell me if I'm wrong, but the way callback works is it auto basically puts in the limiter of the system that's doing the callback, so it would never be able to do that.
Oh, so this is just a mistaken assumption on my end, perhaps. I guess I see the launch, the rocket ship icon and no limit being enforced, and I just assume that it would be scary to click that, but if you were to click it, it won't
Well, so
launch
if
at
you
everything.
click it, that's different than a callback clicking it.
That is correct, yeah. So this is just
So those are
hey,
two
we're
different
protecting
things.
people. Yeah, exactly. So this is just my workaround for the UI offering an option that to me is very scary. So, you give them auditor on an org that specifically just has callbacks, so they can, get the token if they need it, but they can't click the rocket ship and cause, chaos, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so let's get a baseline, like the provision callback is supposed to be like if you provision a host in AWS, if you spin up a new VM and you need to install you want a playbook to run in controller in AWX to bootstrap or provision that new instance. Is that the use case that you have?
So we have both. We're using them, perhaps incorrectly. But yeah, so obviously we can have something like Cloud Init, just trigger the callback locally, do the PTR thing, have it kick off the job, kind of probably how it's meant to be used. But we've also been using it as a, hey, if you have SSH access to a system and the callback information, this is an easy way to kick off a job without having to stumble through the API or tell someone, hey, go jump on a browser. Just an easy way of, hey, you can bake this into a bash script, curl this callback, pass it the token, and kick off a job that is has some guardrails, as it were.
That's interesting. So, and the secret is encoded in the callback URL, and that's what you're trying to give your users access to.
Exactly, yeah. So we give them auditor so they can view the token, from the UI when they need it, to bake into a script or whatever on their end. But we give them auditor so they can't accidentally click the launch icon and blast it out to the entire inventory.
Again, but if they're triggering the callback through the API, it forces the limit, right? Am I wrong on that?
Oh no, yeah,
almost positive that's the way it
absolutely.
works.
If they're calling it through curl, absolutely right. It'll do the PTR, it'll detect the one server in question, and that's totally safe. I think the concern on my end is they log into the UI and they can click the rocket ship icon next to the callback and hit everything in the inventory. So my workaround
that's
is
like prompt on launch for limit. Like I would do prompt on launch limit, and
Yeah,
that's just a user. But that's just like a thing with like how like it's like process, right? Like, yeah, you could do a lot of stupid stuff if you're just clicking around and doing whatever you want. But I mean, if they have access to the job template, that means you trust them to run it, whatever it is. And so in theory, they should then be competent enough to like know that they need to either limit it if you have the pop-up on the limit or not, in my opinion.
Oh, so this might be another, blind spot for me, but I thought that you couldn't have a limit on a callback. At least I've always seen it just return to 400 if you have any limit set at all. Do you maybe just have to pass something extra, kind of like the extra bars, or?
That's an interesting question. I guess I'm not positive, but prompt on launch limit. I don't know if that would interfere with the callback. Does anyone happen to know? I've never tried it, but because it's not like a default set limit already, because it's a blank value. I would hope that it would just ignore that basically, because it's already passing at the limit anyways. I don't know.
Yeah, from my experience, it just gives you, a 400 if you have prompt for limit, but I could, of course, be doing it wrong.
I haven't done one.
Yeah, I haven't either. Be interesting to look into for sure.
Maybe this is an interesting form topic.
Yeah, it could be a good point. Yeah, nice plug, Hal. Especially if we want to continue the conversation, I'd probably say take it to the forum.
It might come as a shock, but like I don't actually use AWX that much in my day-to-day. It's a problem with developers sometimes. All right. So
We use it just in different ways.
I am curious, if you guys don't mind me asking, how many people here use the AWX operator with Flux, or if you're just, using something else?
with what?
Flux.
I had no idea that.
Oh, it's like a Git CI type thing where you basically bake your YAMLs into to Git, and it's a continuous deployment type thing. Our container guys have us use it, so I was just kind of curious if that's commonly used, but it's sounding like probably not.
Developers, well, at least for me, we don't operate and I guess SRE AWS
Mindset.
that much. It's definitely a blind spot for us. There is a lot of people in our community that operates AWX in different shape and scale. So yeah, and a lot of them hang out in the forums. It's a good question.
Like a CI. You say it was a CI tool, Will? Is that what you said it was?
Yeah, it looks like Seth posted exactly what I was talking
Oh,
about.
that's me. Okay. Sorry, David, you were saying that?
No, but it's pretty neat because at least in our case, we have dev and test and prod AWX instances up and running. So it's kind of nice to have you can almost kind of like template things out. So you have like a component where you have everything baked out, and some like Helm override stuff, and then you can just like patch in the URLs and stuff. Like patch the YAML. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It's defunct.
Doesn't look like it.
No,
Oh.
Sean's talking about something else.
Service catalog. Okay, gotcha.
He's trolling.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So this recording will be posted after the meeting, and the new agenda issue should be up in the AWX repo soon. If you have any topic for the next meeting, please put it on the propose it in the agenda agenda issue. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and have a good month. See you all next month.
Difference.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bobby.